Stand on the observation deck of the Burj Khalifa today, and you can see 6 countries on a clear day. 3.5 million people live below you. The metro runs underground. Artificial islands stretch into the sea. The airport handles 90 million passengers a year. Restaurants serve food from 180 different countries. The mall below you has a ski slope inside it. A ski slope. In the middle of the desert. Now look at a photograph from 1950. Sand, a few fishing boats, a small creek. Maybe 20,000 people living in mud brick houses along the shore. That's it. That's all there was. What happened in between is one of the most extraordinary and controversial transformations in human history. A story of vision so audacious it seemed delusional. Of construction so massive it reshaped the actual geography of the planet. Of wealth so sudden it turned fishermen into billionaires within a single generation. No great river runs through Dubai, no natural harbor, no fertile farmland. No ancient civilization left its monuments here. When historians look for the ingredients that make great cities, Dubai has almost none of them. And yet here it stands. The tallest building on Earth, the busiest international airport on Earth, one of the most visited cities on Earth. For decades, the only record of early Dubai was grainy black and white photographs and hand-drawn maps from British colonial officers. But now, using the eye trained on historical imagery, we can reconstruct what those pearl diving villages actually looked like. The dhow boats rocking in the creek. The wind towers catching the desert breeze. The merchants haggling over pearls in the morning light. You are about to witness 200 years of transformation in one video. From Bedouin desert to global empire. Sit back because this story moves fast, just like Dubai itself. No oil was discovered here until 1966. No natural river. No fertile land. No strategic harbor. Dubai had almost nothing. And somehow it became everything. Let's find out how. Long before Dubai existed as a city, this coastline had one thing of value: pearls. The Arabian Gulf's shallow, warm waters produced some of the finest natural pearls in the world, and Arab tribes had been diving for them for over 4,000 years. This wasn't a romantic treasure hunt. It was backbreaking, dangerous, life-shortening work. Divers would descend 12 meters into the Gulf with nothing but a nose clip and a rope tied around their waist, holding their breath for up to 2 minutes, grabbing as many oysters as they could before hauling themselves back up and doing it again, dozens of times a day, for months, in 40-degree heat. The coastline that would become Dubai was home to several Bedouin tribes who moved between the desert interior and the coast depending on the season. They were not city builders. They were survivors, adapting to one of the harshest environments on Earth, finding food and water where none seemed to exist. Then in 1833, a group of around 800 people from the Bani Yaz tribe made a decision that would change everything. Led by Maktoum bin Budi, they migrated from Abu Dhabi and settled permanently at the mouth of a small creek on the Gulf Coast. This creek, maybe 14 kilometers long and a few hundred meters wide, was the most valuable geographical feature for miles around. It was a natural harbor. Ships could anchor safely. Fresh water was relatively accessible. Fish were plentiful. Maktoum bin Budi made one decision in those early years that defines Dubai to this day. He declared it a free port. No taxes on merchants, no tariffs on imported goods, no fees on traders passing through. Every other settlement along this coastline taxed commerce. Dubai taxed nothing. Word spread quickly across the Gulf trading networks. Within a decade, Persian merchants from Linda across the water started relocating their businesses to Dubai's creek. Indian traders followed. Arab merchants from other coastal towns came to see what the fuss was about, and many of them stayed. By 1900, Dubai's creek was the busiest trading post on the entire Trucial Coast, which is what the British called this stretch of the Arabian Gulf. That same free trade philosophy, no taxes, open to everyone, still defines Dubai today. Maktoum bin Budi planted that seed in 1833, and it never stopped growing. By the early 1900s, Dubai had found its rhythm, and that rhythm was built almost entirely on pearls. Every year between June and October, the pearl diving season would transform the creek into a hive of frantic activity. In Dubai's peak pearl years, over 300 boats and nearly 10,000 men would sail out into the Gulf. The boats ranged from small family operations with 10 men to large commercial vessels with 60 or more crew members. The entire economy of the settlement orbited around those few months at sea. The hierarchy on a pearl diving boat was rigid and brutal. The captain, called the Nakuda, commanded everything. Below him were the divers themselves, then the haulers who pulled them back up on the ropes, then the young boys who cooked and cleaned and dreamed of the day they'd be old enough to dive. Divers wore leather caps to protect their ears, wooden clips on their noses, and leather fingertip guards to protect against the sharp oyster shells. That was the entirety of their equipment against the depths of the Gulf. The money from pearling created Dubai's first merchant class. Indian trading families, many of whom had lived in Dubai for generations, became wealthy by financing diving expeditions, buying the catch, and selling pearls to buyers from Paris, London, and Bombay. The creek became an international bazaar where over 20 nationalities traded daily. Persian craftsmen built the elegant wind towers you can still see in Dubai's old city today. These tall square structures caught the prevailing wind and funneled it down into the rooms below, functioning as the world's first air conditioning in a climate that desperately needed it. Dubai in 1900 was small, maybe 10,000 people, but it was genuinely cosmopolitan. Languages mixed on the creek waterfront, religions coexisted. Business was conducted in Arabic, Farsi, Urdu, Gujarati, and English. That openness, that mixture, that willingness to trade with anyone from anywhere was baked into Dubai's identity from the very beginning. Then in 1929, two things happened simultaneously that nearly destroyed Dubai completely. The Great Depression collapsed global luxury markets almost overnight. Wealthy Europeans and Americans stopped buying jewelry. Pearl prices crashed by 70% in a single year. Dubai's boat captains couldn't sell their catches. Merchants who had financed entire fleets found themselves bankrupt. Families who had fed themselves through pearling for generations suddenly had nothing. And then came the second blow, arguably worse than the first. A Japanese inventor named Kokichi Mikimoto had spent decades perfecting the technique of cultivating pearls artificially. By inserting an irritant into an oyster and growing it in controlled conditions, he could produce a pearl virtually identical to a natural one in a fraction of the time at a fraction of the cost. Cultured pearls flooded the market. Even if the depression hadn't happened, natural Gulf pearls would have collapsed anyway. The combination of the two was catastrophic. The entire Gulf pearl industry was essentially dead within 3 years. Boats rotted on the creek shore. Merchants packed up and left. Dubai's population actually shrank. People who had built lives and businesses here packed whatever they could carry and went elsewhere looking for work. Dubai was back to almost zero. But the Maktoum family refused to accept that the story was over. They kept the port open, kept the taxes at zero, kept trading whatever could be traded, and waited for the next opportunity. That patience would eventually be rewarded beyond anything anyone could have imagined. In 1958, Sheikh Rashid bin Saeed Al Maktoum took power in Dubai. He was a pragmatic, restless, intensely practical man who had grown up watching Dubai's pearl economy collapse and had drawn conclusions from it that would shape everything that followed. Sheikh Rashid understood one thing with absolute clarity. Dubai's neighbors were sitting on oceans of oil. Abu Dhabi to the south had reserves that would last centuries. Saudi Arabia had the largest oil deposits on earth. Kuwait was swimming in it. Dubai's own oil reserves, when they were finally discovered in 1966, were modest. They would run out. The only question was how fast. Sheikh Rashid gave himself roughly 30 years to build an economy that didn't need oil to survive. Every decision he made from the moment he took power was filtered through that single obsessive question: what happens after the oil runs out? While other Gulf rulers were building palaces and distributing oil wealth to their populations, Sheikh Rashid was building ports and roads and an airport. The transformation he initiated was methodical and relentless. In 1959, he borrowed money, which was itself a bold move, and used it to dredge Dubai Creek so that larger cargo ships could enter. That single infrastructure investment immediately increased the volume of trade passing through Dubai. In 1960, the first proper road was built. In 1963, Dubai got its first airport, a sand runway in the desert with a small terminal building that would look laughably primitive by any modern standard. But it worked. Planes could land. Business people could arrive. Trade could happen faster. In 1966, oil was finally discovered offshore. The revenue began flowing in. And Sheikh Rashid did something that confounded his contemporaries across the Gulf. He spent nearly all of it on infrastructure. Port Rashid opened in 1972, one of the largest man-made harbors in the world at that time. The dry docks that opened in 1979 could service the largest ships on Earth. Dubai was building itself into the Gulf's indispensable logistics hub, the place you had to pass through if you were moving goods between Europe, Asia, and Africa. Sheikh Rashid reportedly described his philosophy this way: "My grandfather rode a camel, my father rode a camel. I drive a Mercedes, my son drives a Land Rover, his son will drive a Land Rover, but his son's son will ride a camel again unless we build something that lasts." That sentence contains the entire strategic logic of modern Dubai. Every generation had to build for the generation 2 steps ahead. The present was never enough. When Sheikh Rashid died in 1990, Dubai had been transformed from a pearl fishing village into a functioning modern city with real infrastructure, a growing business community, and an international airport handling millions of passengers a year. But the real acceleration hadn't even begun yet. That would come with his son. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum grew up watching his father build Dubai from almost nothing and absorbed the lesson completely. When he began taking effective control of Dubai's direction in the late 1980s and formally became ruler in 2006, Dubai's oil was nearly gone. The window his father had bought was closing. What Sheikh Mohammed did next was either the most audacious urban development program in human history or the most expensive vanity project ever attempted. Depending on who you ask, he started with tourism. Dubai in the early 1990s had no particular reason to attract tourists. The climate was brutal, the beaches were pleasant but unremarkable, and the city had no historic monuments, no great museums, no iconic landmarks. Sheikh Mohammed decided to simply build the landmarks from scratch. The Burj Al Arab, which opened in 1999, was designed from the beginning to be photographed. Its sail-shaped silhouette rising from an artificial island just offshore became one of the most recognizable architectural images on Earth within months of opening. It wasn't just a hotel, it was an announcement. Dubai is serious. Dubai is here. Look at us. The announcement worked. International media covered the Burj Al Arab obsessively. Travel writers came. Celebrities came. Business travelers came. Dubai discovered something important. In the modern media age, if you build something visually extraordinary, the world will come to look at it. And once they come to look, they stay to spend money. The projects that followed made the Burj Al Arab look modest. The Palm Jumeirah, construction beginning in 2001, was an artificial island in the shape of a palm tree built by dredging 94 million cubic meters of sand from the floor of the Gulf and depositing it in a precise pattern offshore. When complete, it added 78 kilometers of new coastline to Dubai and housed luxury hotels, thousands of apartments, and some of the most expensive real estate on Earth. It was visible from space. It was also, from an engineering standpoint, extraordinarily difficult to build. The sand had to be sprayed into position using GPS coordinates, then stabilized, then built upon. Engineers from around the world said it couldn't be done. Dubai did it anyway. Then came the project that would define Dubai's skyline forever. Construction on the Burj Khalifa began in 2004. The ambition was straightforward: build the tallest structure human beings had ever constructed. At 828 meters, with 163 floors, it shattered every previous record. The engineering challenges were immense. At that height, the building sways slightly in the wind by design. The elevators travel at 10 meters per second. The concrete had to be pumped to heights no concrete had ever been pumped to before. And it had to be done at night, because in the Dubai summer heat, the concrete would set too quickly in daylight. Over 12,000 workers were on site every day during peak construction. Meanwhile, Sheikh Mohammed was building entire new city districts from empty desert. Dubai Internet City launched in 2000 and Microsoft, Oracle, IBM, and Cisco all moved in within months, attracted by zero corporate tax, world-class infrastructure, and direct government support. Dubai Media City followed, Dubai Healthcare City, Dubai Knowledge Park. Each was a purpose-built cluster for a specific industry, and each was designed to make doing business there as frictionless as possible. The money pouring into Dubai during the 2000s was staggering. Real estate prices doubled, then doubled again. International developers bought plots of desert and announced projects with names like the world, an archipelago of artificial islands shaped like a world map. Construction cranes were everywhere. The desert was being consumed by concrete and glass at a rate that seemed physically impossible. Then in September 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed in New York and the global financial crisis began. Dubai felt it immediately and then catastrophically. Property prices that had doubled in 2 years fell 50% in 12 months. International investors who had bought Dubai real estate on credit suddenly found themselves holding assets worth half what they had paid for them. Construction projects that had been announced with great fanfare simply stopped. The cranes froze mid-project. Foreign workers, who made up roughly 85% of Dubai's population, started leaving by the tens of thousands. In November 2009, Dubai World, the government-backed investment conglomerate that had funded much of the construction boom, announced that it needed to restructure $26 billion in debt. It was effectively asking its creditors for more time to pay. The announcement sent shockwaves through global financial markets. Commentators who had always been skeptical of Dubai's model declared that the experiment had failed. The mirage had dissolved. The desert was reclaiming what the developers had borrowed from it. Abu Dhabi stepped in with a $10 billion bailout and saved Dubai from default. The price was symbolic, but significant. The Burj Dubai, already completed and already the tallest building on earth, was renamed Burj Khalifa in honor of Abu Dhabi's ruler, Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed. Dubai accepted the terms. It had no choice, and then it got back to work. Sheikh Mohammed had understood something about Dubai's future that went beyond buildings and tourism. Dubai couldn't compete with London's centuries of financial history. It couldn't compete with New York's cultural gravity. It couldn't compete with Shanghai's manufacturing scale. So it became something different entirely. It became the world's middleman. The logic was geographical as much as anything else. Draw a circle with an 8-hour flight radius centered on Dubai, and you cover 2/3 of the world's population. Europe is 4 hours away. India is 3. East Africa is 4. Central Asia is 4. That position, sitting at the intersection of the world's most important trade routes, is Dubai's single greatest natural asset. Everything else was built by human decision and human will, but that geography was given. Emirates Airline was founded in 1985 with 2 leased aircraft, $10 million in government seed money, and instructions to operate without subsidy and turn a profit. Within 5 years, it was profitable. Within 20, it was one of the world's most respected carriers. Today, Emirates operates over 270 aircraft to more than 150 countries and generates revenues exceeding $30 billion a year. It is not simply an airline. It is the mechanism by which Dubai connects itself to the rest of the world. Every person who transits through Dubai International Airport, whether they're flying from Manchester to Mumbai or from Lagos to Beijing, is a potential future visitor, investor, or resident. Jebel Ali Port, which opened in 1979 and expanded continuously over the following decades, became the largest man-made harbor in the world. Today it handles over 14 million container units annually and serves as the logistics backbone for an enormous region. If you buy something manufactured in Asia and sold in Europe or Africa, there is a meaningful chance it passed through Jebel Ali. The port doesn't just serve Dubai's economy. It serves the global economy, and Dubai takes a piece of every transaction. Tourism became the third pillar and in some ways the most visible one. Dubai spent heavily on attracting events that would generate international media coverage. The Dubai World Cup horse race, international tennis and golf tournaments, Formula One, the Dubai Shopping Festival, which turned retail therapy into a spectator sport. The strategy was consistent. Get people to come once, show them something extraordinary, and trust that they will come back and tell others. By 2023, Dubai was receiving 17 million international tourists a year, more than its total population several times over. The hospitality industry that Sheikh Mohammed began building with the Burj Al Arab had grown into one of the most sophisticated tourism ecosystems on Earth. With over 145-star hotels, restaurants representing virtually every cuisine from every country, entertainment options ranging from indoor skiing to skydiving to hot air ballooning over the desert. But here is what the glossy tourism campaigns and the architectural photography don't show you. Dubai was built, literally and physically, by migrant workers living in conditions that generated sustained international criticism throughout the construction boom years. At the peak of construction in the mid-2000s, an estimated 250,000 construction workers were employed in Dubai. The vast majority came from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Most had paid substantial recruitment fees back home, sometimes $2,000 to $3,000, borrowed from moneylenders at high interest rates, just for the opportunity to work in Dubai. They arrived expecting the terms they had been promised in their home countries: specific wages, specific working hours, specific living conditions. What many of them found instead was a system where the employment contract they actually received in Dubai was different from the one they had signed at home. This practice, known as contract substitution, left workers in an extremely vulnerable position. They had debt to repay. They couldn't afford to go home without earning money first. And under the kafala sponsorship system that governed migrant labor across the Gulf, a worker's legal right to remain in the country was tied to their employer. Leaving a job without permission could mean deportation and a ban on returning. Human rights organizations documented cases of workers living in overcrowded accommodation, working in extreme heat without adequate breaks, having their passports held by employers, and going months without receiving wages that had been promised. The deaths of construction workers, some from heat stroke, some from accidents on sites that critics argued had inadequate safety standards, drew particular international attention. Dubai and the UAE have introduced significant labor reforms over the years, particularly after sustained international pressure intensified in the early 2010s. The government launched a wage protection system requiring employers to pay workers electronically, creating a digital record of whether wages were actually being paid. Accommodation standards were codified and theoretically enforced. Air-conditioned rest areas became mandatory on construction sites. The kafala system was modified to give workers more ability to change employers. Critics, including Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, have consistently argued that the reforms, while real, remain insufficient and that enforcement remains inconsistent. Supporters of Dubai's approach argue that the working conditions available in Dubai, even at their worst, represented economic opportunities that workers from sending countries actively sought out, and that the reforms implemented represent genuine progress. The debate has no clean resolution. The buildings stand. The workers who built them deserve to be part of the story. Dubai today and tomorrow. Sheikh Rashid gave Dubai 30 years to build something that didn't need oil to survive. It has been more than 60 years since he began that project, and Dubai's oil revenues now represent less than 1% of its GDP. By any measure, the project succeeded. The Dubai of 2024 is a genuinely post-oil economy. Finance, tourism, trade, real estate, and professional services drive the numbers. The population has grown from 20,000 in 1950 to over 3.5 million today, with expatriates making up roughly 90% of residents. Over 200 nationalities live and work in a city that didn't meaningfully exist 75 years ago. More than 300 languages are spoken within its boundaries. Expo 2020, delayed a year by the COVID-19 pandemic and held in 2021 and 2022, welcomed 24 million visitors to a purpose-built exhibition city in the desert south of Dubai. The site has since been transformed into District 2020, a permanent urban district designed to house technology companies and innovation-focused businesses. The expo, like everything Dubai builds, was designed to leave something behind. Dubai's 2040 Urban Master Plan targets a population of 5.8 million residents and aims to triple the city's green and recreational spaces, while concentrating development around 5 urban centers connected by efficient transport links. The city is investing heavily in artificial intelligence governance, positioning itself as a global hub for AI policy and deployment. The Dubai Future Foundation runs multiple programs aimed at making Dubai the world's most prepared city for technological disruption. There are plans for a temperature-controlled city district, effectively a dome over a neighborhood that would maintain a comfortable climate, regardless of what the desert outside is doing. In a city that reaches 50 degrees Celsius in summer, the idea is not as absurd as it sounds. Dubai has a consistent track record of building things that sound absurd until they exist. The criticisms of Dubai's model are real and they are serious. The political system offers no democratic participation. Civil liberties are restricted in ways that would be unacceptable in Western democracies. The migrant labor system, despite reforms, remains a source of legitimate human rights concern. Environmental sustainability questions hang over a city built in a desert that is now one of the highest per capita carbon emitters on Earth. These are not small issues, and they do not disappear because the skyline is beautiful. And yet, a child born in Dubai today inherits a city built from nothing in a single human lifetime. Their grandparents remember the creek, the dhow boats, the pearl divers. They themselves grow up in one of the most connected, most visited, most internationally recognized cities on Earth. That transformation, whatever its costs and contradictions, is without precedent in the modern world. Dubai has survived the collapse of the pearl economy, the depletion of its oil reserves, a global financial crisis that nearly bankrupted it, and a worldwide pandemic that shut down the international travel it depends on. Each time the world said it was over, Dubai built something taller, opened something new, announced something that had never been attempted before. That is what makes Dubai Dubai. It shouldn't exist. The desert is too hot, the land too barren, the odds too long. Every rational analysis of this place 100 years ago would have concluded that nothing significant could ever be built here. And yet here it stands, the most visited city on Earth, built in living memory, by rulers who refused to accept what was impossible, and by workers from every corner of the globe, who laid every stone and poured every foundation that made the impossible real. The pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity. Sheikh Rashid said that Dubai chose the other path, and the desert became an empire. Thanks for watching. This video took weeks of research, going through colonial records, economic histories, first-hand accounts, and primary sources to piece together into one story. If this journey from empty desert to global empire meant something to you, Hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the cities and civilizations that shaped our world. And tell me in the comments, what city should we cover next? As always, we'll see you in the past.